10 Simple Rules for Supporting a Temporary Online Pivot in Higher Education. This paper is by Emily Nordmann, Chiara Horlin, Jacqui Hutchison, Joanne Murray, Louise Robson, Michael Seery, and myself, Jill Mackay. Who are we? We are a group of discipline-based education researchers loosely affiliated because of our shared interest in technology-enhanced learning. Many of us have worked together on our Enhancement Themes collaborative cluster on widening participation with lecture recording. As discipline-based researchers, we work within our own fields to explore how we teach. For example, I research how veterinary scientists learn and are assessed on complex tasks such as the diagnosis of a patient. We feature multiple disciplines including veterinary science, biology, psychology and chemistry. We are weaker on humanities, with the philosophy and ethical experience coming from teaching within our own fields. But we also represent work in a number of universities. In alphabetical order, these are the University of Aberdeen, the University of Edinburgh, the University of Glasgow and the University of Sheffield. On the right-hand side, I have included a picture of my current teaching environment, my kitchen table, a space that I share with my partner and my cat. This is far from an ideal workspace, and yet it is far better than many students and staff have available to them right now, as we all work from home. What have we done? We have written guidance on how universities can support a temporary pivot to online teaching and learning in the academic year 2020 to 2021. This paper is being submitted to PLOS, but we have a preprint link here at sciarchive/QDH25. The paper details the evidence behind our suggestions, and in this presentation I will cover why we think these rules are important. We expect that COVID-19 will cause significant disruption to the academic year 2020 to 2021. We expect that staff and students may have to shield, they may have to take sick leave, and they will be greatly limited in their ability to travel, both to campus and internationally. We cannot rely on having everyone in one teaching space. Our 10 rules have some guiding principles. They are rules in name only, in that we are submitting to a series called 10 Simple Rules in PLOS. They're more like guidance or recommendations. We intend that this paper is accessible to people who do not have PG Certs in education or fellowship with Advanced HE. We wanted to limit the pedagogical jargon that we used. While there are interesting and valuable discussions to have about critical pedagogy in these times, we wanted to produce materials that would be useful at a very broad level. Finally, our big underlying principle is that COVID-19 is going to impact our equality, diversity and inclusion agendas. Staff and students in certain categories will be disproportionately affected. They may need to shield and be physically unable to attend campus for a long time. They may be working from home with caring responsibilities to family or young children. They may have limited internet connections, particularly in rural or deprived areas, or have limited access to devices. Both staff and students may need to prioritise the highest earner in the household, sacrificing access to internet, devices, and protected time to those people. Fundamental to our rules is this underlying belief that everyone, staff and student, deserve a university environment that works for them. Rule 1. A temporary online pivot is not the same as emergency remote teaching or a specialised online course. We are clear that this situation is a compromise. We cannot open campuses as normal, but nor are we delivering fully online programmes designed from the ground up to promote distance learning. This compromise will require all levels of the university, from senior management to students, to recognise this is making the best of a bad situation. Lessons can be learned from successful online degrees and the emergency short-term online pivots we have seen since March. Many programmes that need to pivot would never have desired to shift online, but many others may find that a hybridised model works for them in future. Our rules pertain to the academic year 2020 to 2021 and highlight that we have a short amount of time to make meaningful changes to delivery to support distance learning. Rule 2. Provide asynchronous content. Asynchronous content is materials such as recorded lectures, reading materials and activities that the student can access at a time and place that suits them. There is no requirement for multiple people to be engaging with the material at the same time. This recording is an example of asynchronous content. As discussed earlier, we must expect limits on students' time to access materials. We must expect challenges to internet connection that may limit people's ability to network at the same time. Therefore, it is preferable to provide content to students that can be consumed at a time that suits them. This will mitigate access issues and stress levels. Rule 3. Provide synchronous and asynchronous contact and communication. Most educators will agree that the majority of learning occurs in the interaction between the student and the tutor. While students can review content asynchronously, we need to build learning opportunities to offer formative feedback. This can be done synchronously, with tutors and students directly interacting in real time, using e-learning software such as Blackboard Collaborate, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Hangouts, or other softwares. Students can be walked through questions and discussion points or interactive tutorials. Asynchronous content, such as discussion boards, email, or even Twitter, can be used to provide staff and student opportunities to feedback on course materials. Distance learning must still be engaged learning, with formative feedback built into these learning activities. Rule 4. Set and communicate clear expectations about engagement. Rules 2 and 3 represent significant changes in how content is traditionally delivered in university. We must be clear and upfront with students about what we expect from them. We often talk about nominal teaching hours in our credit-bearing courses. Consider clearly outlining to students how many hours you expect them to be doing independent reading, tutorials, group work, and preparing assignments. This is particularly important for our incoming first years, the majority of whom will have had significantly disrupted transitions into university and who will have greatly limited ability to benchmark their work against peers. Students cannot be expected to simply know how to engage in online learning. Rule 5. Design appropriate assessments and communicate expectations clearly. Assessment is a key learning opportunity. For students in a programme's later years, assessment may be a barrier to progression. Consider what skills and knowledge can be assessed and how they can be assessed remotely. Open book assignments will likely become more normalised, as it is very difficult to monitor how students are accessing materials. Forcing students to use keyboard monitoring software, etc. to ensure compliance, again, may have disproportionate effects on students with limited access to resources. Quality assurance protocols should be understanding of the need for assessment changes in this following academic year, and the universities will benefit from clearly outlining special circumstances policies in these exceptional times. Rule 6. Monitor and support engagement. Many virtual learning environments have engagement monitoring tools. Even if you do not have access to these, or wish not to use them, record who is attending virtual sessions and ensure that a lack of engagement is not indicative of a more fundamental underlying problem. This is again particularly important for our incoming first years as they transition to becoming more independent university learners. Support engagement compassionately and do not harass students. For some, simply getting through this year might be a very great victory. Rule 7. Review the use and the format of recorded content. Lecture recordings have been well utilised in the emergency pivot between March and June of 2020. They can be a useful and time-saving way of delivering content at a distance. However, they should be used with caution and in compliance with the copyright and performance rights accorded in your institution's policy. Many aspects of a lecture recording may not translate to distance, such as physical demonstrations and class discussions. Be cautious of their use, especially for incoming first years. With this note of caution, it may also be nice for incoming first years to see the odd example of what they can look forward to when things return to normal. Rule 8. Focus on achievable learning outcomes for online field, clinical and laboratory work. For degree programmes with a large practical component, a temporary online pivot may seem like an impossible task. Consider what practical skills have underlying transferable skills, such as critical evaluation of evidence, teamwork and data literacy skills that can be translated to an online activity. The use of videos in practical settings may be useful to help introduce students to concepts. Ultimately, many things cannot be taught online, and programmes should be thinking now about how theoretical work can be front-loaded in academic year 2020 to 2021. Again, this is far from ideal and risks siloing information for students, but refer to Rule 1. A temporary online pivot is not emergency teaching, and nor is it a fully online course. Rule 9. Ensure resources are available, accessible and signposted. While Rule 1 refers to this teaching as a compromise, we must still maintain high standards. Library resources must be signposted and accessible to students at a distance. If this is not possible, consider using alternatives. Consider how accessible resources are to those with learning adjustments, and JISC have provided excellent online guides for designing virtual learning environments with this in mind. Consider also how long you expect students and staff to be sitting in possibly suboptimal work areas at home. Rule 10. Create a community for staff and students. We are teaching and learning in exceptional times. We did not want to be here, and yet here we are. We end our paper with the following misappropriation of Maya Angelou. Students will forget what software we used. They will forget the mistakes we made in a time of crisis, but they will never forget how we made them feel. We can still create an inclusive learning environment by valuing the learning experience of the student having to share a tablet device with their kid's sibling as much as the student with access to a home office. We must design for both. And as a sector, we must value our staff experience too. Evaluations and performance management in this time must be sensitive to the phenomenal effort being put in from all sides. If these rules have intrigued you, our full paper is available at that SciArchive link. This includes a summary of the evidence behind each rule and further suggestions. We would also encourage you to seek us out on Twitter, where we have been engaging with readers feeding back on the paper. Ultimately, we wish you a successful, healthy and safe academic year.